What's interesting from our perspective here is when you're looking at the online table, it looks very similar to what we're seeing on our big screen with our players sitting around. It looks like a real game.
Right.
But on online, there's total anonymity. What's either the advantages and the disadvantages to that?
Well, the way I look at this, if you enjoy the idea of playing in your home, having nobody know who you are, you don't have any kind of intimidation factor or any kind of embarrassment factor if you're new to the game or if you're trying to learn more about the game. If you make a mistake, nobody even knows who you are.
Right.
If, for instance, if it's time for you to act and you're in a physical casino, in a real-world setting, you may get very flustered, other players may get upset, the dealer may say, come on, sir, it's your turn to act. Online, all you'll get is a prompt. And the worst thing that can happen is that you might be temporarily put out of the game until you click back in again. But nobody will know what your reason was for not being there. Nobody will think, well, this terrible person doesn't even know how to play. For all the other players know, you might have stepped out of the room briefly to take a phone call or deal with an emergency in your house. There's no intimidation factor, no embarrassment factor. That's why it's a wonderful learning environment for a beginner.
Right. And it's also great that you can click, I'll be back,
Right.
and go do something else and just sit out of the game for a little while.
You can sit out as long as 3 rounds usually. That's not as long as you can be out of a game in a real world setting. So.
Mm-hmm. Now this is a very interesting hand here. We've got Iran, who has top pair, and he's raising an ace-jack that Josh has. Josh 3-bet him as a bluff.
Yes, he did.
And there was a call, so now I think Josh is in trouble.
No, that river isn't going to add anything.
Yeah. Boy, when you get that money, that just comes right over to you. It's a great thing.
Another great advantage for somebody learning the game is once your hand is shown on the river or at showdown, there's no way you can possibly make a mistake. If you've stayed into the river and you've called all the bets, the dealer or the automated software that takes the place of the dealer will read your hand and award you the pot if you've won it. There's no way you can get confused and lose a hand because you don't know how to read.
Josh has raised him. David has taken the stand there. David? What are you going to do, David?
Fold.
Okay.
I think that was probably.
So what was your thinking?
He had
there,
ace
David?
king.
No, we're so fast into the other hand. How do they have time to debrief?
The play online is a lot more card-based than opponent-based. In other words, you want to play the best starting hands and then make your subsequent decisions based on the action rather than on trying to play a player. When you're playing in person, you can pick up on visible tells. Somebody hesitates, it means something different online than it does in person. And you really don't know exactly what it means online. It could mean anything from the person just stepped out of the room to they got disconnected temporarily to they're deliberately trying to act as though they don't have a big hand when they really do. You really don't know online, but in person, you can pick up on visible tells.
Yeah, but I would think that online, that if somebody hesitates, you know, and then raises,
Right.
you know, and you've been watching them and they've been calling very succinctly or in a certain pattern. Suddenly now they hesitate and then make a move.
Right.
You kind of think that they're probably trying to suck you in.
That's true. Now, the most common internet tells are those that have to do with the speed of a person's play. If somebody, for instance, checks instantaneously, probably doesn't have very much. On the other hand, if that person checks quickly, and then the moment you bet, check raises you, he's probably got a strong hand.
Well, that's one of the advantages, I would imagine, to studying the game and taking notes.
Right. Because the only way that you can remember a player online is if you have actually recorded what you have seen of that person's action under their screen name. Now, at some sites, you do have an image also to go by. It could be if the person has an image that they've kept from the very beginning when they signed up, which is the case on some sites, then you can also maybe visibly remember that image. But if you're going just by a screen name, which is what we're looking at right now, the only way you're going to remember how that player acted in a series of hands is if you've got good notes. Now, many sites have a note-taking feature where you can actually type in notes on what you observe of play, and then when you go back to the site a week from now, a month from now, and that same player is in a game with you, you can simply right-click over that player's screen name, and those notes will come up to refresh your memory on what you saw of his play.
That's great. Now we see some statistics up there which are so extraordinarily helpful, I think,
Yes.
because for example, when I play, I like to play a lot of hands. I know I play too many hands. I'm going to look at that and I'm going to see.
And that'll tell you the unvarnished truth.
Yes, I will.
If you have a tendency to be a calling station, or to play too many hands, or to loosen up after you've played the first few rounds because you're impatient and you're not getting a lot of good cards, those statistics will tell you the truth. It'll tell you how many times you've called, how many times you've
there we go.
played past the flop, how many times did you see the showdown, or what percentage of the time did you see the showdown, and what percentage of the time when you went to the showdown did you win the showdown?
Right. Well, here it's interesting. They've seen 36% flops,
Right.
haven't won anything.
It's not very good.
Right. So that's just seeing a third of the flops, have not even gotten to the river very often. You can see, actually got to the river 21% of the time. It says no fold.
These are very detailed statistics.
Well, this is a great site. I mean,
It's a great site. Yes, it is.
It really is a great site especially for novice players, beginning players, because it's going to help them develop their game.
World Poker Exchange, worldpx.com.